Thank you. My name's Cyndi Masters, and I'm an alcoholic. And because of the grace of God, some simple actions in this program, and both sides of sponsorship, I've been sober every single day in a row since December the 17th, 1985. And for that, I'm very, very grateful. It remains the biggest deal in my life. And I have an amazing life, which is astonishing to me still today. I recognize a few people here today, which is pretty cool. Reggie and Sarah, and thanks for coming. For those of you that have your cameras on, I really appreciate it because this is a two-way thing. And if I couldn't look at you, I would be looking at me, and that wouldn't be any good. So I really like being able to see you, and it makes it a lot more like a real-time meeting. And I appreciate you participating in that way. So my drinking history is a lot shorter than my sober history. I really drank, for 10 years, and I drank alcoholically for 5, and I drank chronically late stage for about 2. And what I mean by that was when I originally got here was 1980. So my getting sober took about 5 years. And if you have had some relapses, you can read about that in the foreword to the second edition. So in the foreword to the second edition, it says, for those of us that come and really try, 50% of us get sober right away. The caveat being those of us that come and really try. Another 25% get sober after some tries. And another 25% may never achieve long-term sobriety, but they continue to get better if they continue to come and really try. Now, I don't believe that if you are here and you've not had a relapse, that you ever have to have one. But if you have had a relapse, it's okay because this is alcoholism. And it took me several tries. And I was really trying the whole time. My capacity for honesty and trying were very limited. I got here in 1980. I got here, and I know this is an international meeting, so I don't know what they call it. I got in with a lot of trouble with the law. I had 7 felonies. I was being tried as an adult, even though I was 17 years old. I've been living on the streets since I was 14. I didn't go to school. Because you don't. I was in 25 institutions by the time I was 17, and that includes asylums, real asylums, like government institutions, jails, etc. And so my good news is that I can't cover for my alcoholism. I always get caught. I always get in trouble. That's just my story. And so my good news was that when they put me in jail, I went into serious withdrawal because I went into alcoholic seizures. And so they had to take me out, take me to the hospital, and I ended up getting to go to treatment. What makes me an alcoholic is this, and I don't care if you drink at your kitchen table, or you drink at a bar, or you drink on the streets the way I did. What we have in common, if we are both alcoholic, is that when I drink, I cannot tell you how much I'm going to drink. I cannot guarantee that I am going to stop at 1 or 2. And the doctor's opinion says I never can guarantee that. It doesn't say that it says that the average temperate drinker can always guarantee it. Now, I can do some controlled drinking here and there, but I can't sustain it. Marty Mann, who was the first woman to get and stay sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, and her story was in the big book, and she founded the Council of Alcoholism. She had a test that's different than the one in the big book, and she said if you can drink 1 ounce of alcohol a day and no more than 2 ounces, not glasses, because we can have a very big glass, and you can do that successfully for 30 days, my hat's off to you. But if I just think about trying that test, it makes me sick, And so I got sober on consequences the first time. I didn't really believe that I was an alcoholic. I believed that I was broken. And I believed that I was broken beyond repair. I've been told by society I was broken. And I thought Alcoholics Anonymous was a step up for me. And when you guys let me come and Some of you let me stay in your houses, and you fed me and you were nice to me. And I fell in love with how I was treated in Alcoholics Anonymous, but I felt like I was a fraud. I felt like I was pretending to be an alcoholic when really I was just mentally ill and broken. And so, what happens for somebody like me when I feel like a fraud in Alcoholics Anonymous is there's nothing worse than not working the steps and being sober. I'd rather be drunk than not work the steps and be sober. And so for me, not working the steps and being sober is awful because I don't just have a committee up here. I've got a firing squad. And it's constantly telling me I'm a piece of junk. I don't belong here. I don't deserve it. Nobody's going to love me. It just that's what was going on in my head. And when I'm not drinking with no solution, that gets really, really loud and I have to drink. And so I got drunk and I relapsed. And long story short, I went to treatment. I actually really tried to work the steps. And I admitted I was an alcoholic because it was clear that I had never been able to control my drinking, and it was clear I'd never had a manageable life. But I'm here to tell you that's not really the first step in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's the first step we read off the walls, but it's not the first step in the big book. And I'll share that with you in a minute. But on that, I came and I really tried, and I learned how to change my behavior. I always wanted the right psychiatrist or the right probation officer or parole officer or whoever that would help me understand how to live so that I could feel the way you looked. And what I learned living in this halfway house, they also emancipated me, made me be an adult. I've been around Alcoholics Anonymous 6 months, but I'm still 17 years old. I don't have a driver's license. I don't have a education. I don't have nothing. But they say, go to meetings and get there early. And I went to meetings and I got there early. And guess what happened? I started to feel a part of Alcoholics Anonymous because I picked up chairs. I sat up. I helped with coffee. People began to know my name. And if you see a newcomer, there's nothing more important than remembering their name. Nobody remembered my name. I didn't hardly remember my name at that point. You know, I got called a lot of other things. And so I started to feel a part of Alcoholics Anonymous because I was acting like a part of Alcoholics Anonymous. Then the next thing they said is go get a job, a job. Well, you can imagine the jobs I performed on the streets. They are not resume worthy. And if you don't have a driver's license, you don't have an ID. So it's very hard to get a job. So I got a job setting tobacco in the fields in Kentucky. And that's hard, back-breaking work. But you know what happened? My shoulders started to go back and my chin started to go up. And after meetings, I stopped manipulating men to buy my coffee and my pie. And I started to buy my own, and I started to feel better about myself because I was doing the things that people that feel better about themselves do. And that's how we get to feel better. Then they made me go get my GED, which I said, GED, man, that's for losers. And for those of you in other countries, that's the equivalency of having gone to high school. And I really thought it was for losers because I didn't think I could do it. And they didn't care what I felt about it. They said, go take this test to see where you are. And I took the test and I didn't have to take any of the classes. I took the big test. I scored in the top 2% of anybody that had ever taken a test. Now, mind you, that was in Kentucky. So, everything's relevant for those of you that know about Kentucky. And then I went back to Cincinnati, Ohio, which was home base, and I became an AA Wonder Girl. And it's not hard. If you have a really low bottom, right? If you just start speaking in complete sentences, the King's English, people are like, look at her, she's so much better. People had me speaking everywhere. I made my best attempt to make amends. I lived in a foster home where my foster brother and sister had muscular dystrophy. And it was the first place that I was confronted with my alcoholism. I was 14 years old, and I got kicked out of there, a place that they needed me and I wanted to be. But my foster brother, anyway, I went to make amends to the Muscular Dystrophy Association for doing a fundraiser while I lived with them and trying to invest the money, which really is this equivalent of stealing it. And somehow they gave me a volunteer position, and then they offered me the job of the executive director for the outlying counties. Now I'm 2 years sober. I'm 20 years old. I don't have any education, and they're giving me this executive position. And my ego said, oh, yes. Because, see, I've always been waiting for somebody to recognize me and where I should have been. And I think I'm entitled to be where I should have been if I didn't have the life I had. And so my ego took the job. And then everything else inside of me didn't know what to do with the job. They gave me a secretary. I hid from her. What do you do with a secretary? I tried to dress appropriately for the job, and I got confronted by the regional manager because I had a bright fuchsia skirt suit, which I thought was fine, but you could have seen me at 100 yards. But what I'm doing is I'm coming to AA and I'm telling you, hey man, you work the steps, you can have a business card, you get a secretary, you can buy a new car. But that's not what AA promises. But that's what I heard, and I thought that's what made me a success in AA. Now I'm feeling like a liar because I go to work and I hide, and I come to AA and tell you how great I am. I can only live a double life so long. That's a double life it talks about in the fifth step, but I'm living that double life sober. So I was at that job almost a year, and I woke up drunk. I was almost 3 years sober, and I don't remember waking up drunk. And I went to Oak Street, which is the oldest clubhouse in the country, arguably, here in Cincinnati. And I raised my hand at the new meeting and I said, I drank and I'm ready to be sober. Because I saw other people do it and I thought it'd be that easy. But I left that meeting. I'm now 21 years old. I left that meeting and I got drunk. And I bought booze legally for the first time that I know of. I tried to come back to AA occasionally. Towards the end of a year, I tried to come back less. My drinking life became a normal life. I drank if you had money. If I had money, I drank. I'd live on your couch. If I had a place, you'd live on my couch. I went through jobs. My car got repossessed and the bar, but I didn't get in any legal trouble. I didn't get institutionalized. I was a garden variety alcoholic, which was important. It just meant that I needed to drink. And when I drank, I can't tell you how much I'm going to consume. And I couldn't tell you where it was going to take me. The other thing I am is I'm a puking drunk and I'm a blackout drunk. And what being a blackout drunk for me means is that I can wake up in the middle of a sentence and not know where I am. And as a woman who had lived on the streets, coming out of blackouts has been terrifying. Not just scary, but terrifying at times. I come out of a blackout in some very, very awful traumatic situations. And so every time I would come out of a blackout, I would be afraid, just terror. So my last drunk, December the 16th, 1985, I'm coming out of this blackout. I have puked on myself. I have urinated on myself. Why do I share this? Alcoholism is not pretty. I don't ever want to sexy my alcoholism up because the longer I get away from that drink, the harder it is to remember the pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization of where alcoholism took me. And so I come out of this blackout and I'm so scared and I'm crying like a little baby. Now I'm a tough street broad and I'm crying like a little baby because I can't figure out how to get home. Now here's the real pitiful, incomprehensible, demoralizing part of that. I'm sitting right in front of where I live. And something changed in me. And I went from that admission that we read on the wall to what it talks about in the big book, which is concession. In the big book, it says we conceded to our innermost self that we were alcoholic. This is the first step of recovery. And so what that meant, it was no longer this admission. It was that in that moment, I knew, because I think I'd had lingering notions the whole time I'd been sober, that somehow, someday, some way, I could drink like they drank. If I had an education, if I had a better job, if I had a safe place to live, if somebody cared about me, I could drink like other people. And what happened in that moment is I knew that no matter what changed outside of me, alcohol was always going to take me to that place. And that was the concession. And I woke up different. And I did AA different. I asked somebody to sponsor me that I had watched get sober. And I memorized the big book. I would confront old timers when they were wrong because even in AA, it had to be more to be enough. I had to know more than you. I had to know the history better than you. I had to know about the Washingtonians, what they read, what the Oxford group read. And I had to spout it off in every meeting that I was in. And so all this lady knew how to do was get and stay sober, something I didn't know how to do, and how to have, a family and a husband and golly. And so I thought she was going to be so thrilled when I asked her to sponsor me because, they called me Big Book Cyndi. And I thought, gosh, she's going to say Big Book Cindy's asking me to sponsor her. All right. But here's what she said. She said, Cyndi, I'll sponsor you on one condition. I said, what's that? You're no longer allowed to quote the big book. Woo. Not allowed to quote the big book. She said, you can only paraphrase as it applies in your life. I had no idea what that meant. I knew how to recite and quote, but I didn't know how to put it on here. I didn't know how to put it on my life and my heart. And so my first step of humility was accepting that and saying, okay. Then she had me look at the first step. Bum, bum, bum. The power of the mind. She said, I want you to go deeper. What are the probable consequences if you drink again? Well, I said what we all say. I'll go to jail, a mental hospital, or I'll die. Guess what she did? She laughed at me. She said, Cyndi, you're not afraid of any of that. She's right. I grew up in jail, man. I do so good there. And if you've ever been into real mental asylum, I'm not talking about the Holiday Inn units. I'm talking about a real mental asylum. If you've ever been in one, if you just get more pudding than everybody else, you're like Queen Bee. It's just not hard to win there. And death, I've ridden a Harley Davidson most of my recovery. That is not somebody that's afraid of dying statistically. That's like the next adventure. I tested it around every corner. I wanted to die. I did not want to be here. I couldn't do life. She said, what are you really afraid of? And here's what I came up with. I drink and I don't die. See, when I drink, I'm a black hole. I'm incapable of love. But I lie to myself and say I am. But I will disappoint you around every corner. Every corner. I will convince you to love me. I know how to manipulate you. And I will think I love you, but I will use you. And around every corner, I'm promising you I'm going to be at that baseball game. But see, I just need one more drink, and I can't show up. That's not love. I promise you this. I promise you that. How many hollow promises did I make? I never wanted to see those look in somebody's eye again, ever. And that's still what motivates me. If I drink, that'll be the story of all my relationships. I don't want to live like that. And I went on, I'm a big book person. I'm a step person. I believe in them. And I believe that it is a very intimate thing that happens with sponsor and sponsee alike. I think that when I get the privilege of walking somebody through the steps, no matter if I like you or not when I agree to do it. And a lot of times I don't like you at all when I agree to do it because the reason you're asking me to do it is because you're sick. All right. But by the time we get halfway through, I love you. I love you. I mean, it's a real deep love. The girls I sponsor, oh my God. Oh my God. They were all, not all, but a lot of them were here last weekend. So once a year we try to get together and the weekend's different. We don't work the steps that weekend. We work the steps the rest of the year. We play together because most of us have so much responsibility. We all sponsor women. We all have service positions. A lot of them have children. A lot of us take care of our parents. So when we get together, we do have a couple of meetings, but the rest of the time, it is really about bonding and supporting and being together and things that we don't know how to do as alcoholics. I don't know how to have friendships. I don't know how to have shoulder-to-shoulder relationships. It's been really neat. There's a few stories I always tell, and I'll tell them now about my sobriety. So, I got sober in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is where I am now. I have a house in Cincinnati. I have a house in Louisville. You heard where I came from. Can you believe I have two houses? Well, my second home wasn't planned for Cincinnati, but it's where I am. And it's a miracle. It's a miracle that I have anything. And it's all due to Alcoholics Anonymous. But I've lost them all sober. When I was 11 years sober, my grandmother died. My grandmother was my safe person in my life. There weren't very many safe people. My grandmother was consistent. Her message about God was consistent. She went to church all the time. I had two grandmothers. I had one that went to church all the time and threatened me with God and threatened me with what would happen if I didn't do certain things with God. Then I had this other grandmother, and all she did was love. And all she ever told me is, Cyndi, God loves you. And there was a period on the end of it. And so that's what I learned when I came to AA. God loves you. There's a period on the end of it. And she loved everybody. She grew up in an era where people were prejudiced towards other people for the color they were born, for their sexuality, for whatever. And my grandmother was not prejudiced towards anybody. She never said a negative word about a single person, which is exactly what we learn in the 10th step, which is love and tolerance. We're all the same. We love each other. And so when she died, she was afraid. And I got so mad at God. I took a walk in the dark and I said, God, if you are somebody that would let this lady that served you her whole life be afraid to come meet you, I don't want nothing to do with you. And at 11 years sober, I took a walk in the dark sober and I thought about blowing my brains apart. And I share that because some of us do blow our brains apart, and most of us will take a walk in the dark at some point. But my feet were trained. And so I continued to go to meetings, and my heart was trained. And so when I went to meetings, I didn't go with my 11-year sober persona. You know what I'm talking about? I'm 11 years sober, and I have to act this way and say this way in the meeting. I went to meetings and I cried. And I said, I can't feel God. And it's lonely. See, I didn't puke all my problems on the meeting, but I also wasn't dishonest. Because if you've had a spiritual experience and you get separated from God, I can't tell you the kind of loneliness that comes with that. Before, I had that, but I didn't know it because I hadn't known something different. So I told you I rode a Harley Davidson most of my recovery. I got in early recovery because I vibrated like this. And, I had that big firing squad in my head, and I couldn't sit still. And I would get on that Harley and it vibrated more than me, and it was louder than all that crap in my head. And I could hear God in the wind. Because, see, God will meet us where we are. We don't have to go to their building. We don't have to go to the mountains. We don't have to go to the ocean. We just have to want to meet God. And wherever we are, God will meet us. So anyway, I got on that Harley Davidson. I had turned 12 years sober. And so the other thing I was willing to do besides tell the truth was I was willing to see God if he would just show up. And so I got on that Harley, and I got on, in Louisville, Kentucky, all the major interstates intersect. And I got on that part they call Spaghetti Junction. I was doing about 70 miles an hour. And so was the rest of traffic. And somebody came over in my lane and hit me. And according to the police report, I was catapulted at 17 foot in the air. I came down on the hood of a car, rolled off that car, and that car drove up me. So this side of my face, you can still see some of the scars, but I've had 24 surgeries on it. And it shredded, the undercarriage of that car shredded my face. My heart got shifted to the left. My ribs were crushed and they went through my lungs. And so I am laying on the highway and I am not breathing. I am dying. And when you can't breathe, you know you're dying. And guess what? It's scary. Because it's scary to change home groups. Of course, it's scary to face the big adventure, right? And so I let go in the most wonderful way, more than I ever have. And man, did I feel loved. I just got wrapped in love. Now, that accident had an awful lot of consequences. I have a traumatic brain injury. I have a spinal cord injury. My aorta had some issues, just a lot of things. And nobody expected me to survive, and nobody expected me to function. But you know what happened? You guys showed up in droves. They had to make new regulations at the hospital for how many visitors from Cincinnati and Louisville. I looked like a celebrity. But it was you. And when you have that kind of love, and see, I could never feel the love because I still was guarded, even at 10, 11, 12 years sober. I still was crusty. And I thought you loved me because you had to. And so the hospital and the wreck made me so vulnerable that I actually felt your love because I had nothing to give. And you just kept showing up and loving me. I had one lady that showed up every day, read 24-hour day book with me, prayed with me, held my hand. I had sponsee come from Cincinnati to Louisville, start crying hysterically when she hit the room and said, "Where's Cyndi?" Because I was so disformed and disfigured that she didn't recognize me. It scared me a little. So when I went home, Now I'm 12 years sober. I've lost everything I have. I lost my business. I had owned a business. I lost all my material things. I can't drive. I'm having seizures. So what's going to become of me? Where will my value come from? Luckily, this is what they mean by being in the middle of the boat. You guys came and you brought me new people that were feeling sorry for themselves. And these people, these girls, they walk in my house and you'd say, tell Cyndi what you told us in the car on the way over. Well, she'd take one look at me, I look like this. And she'd say, And then they coax her a little and she'd say, well, my boyfriend left. I don't know how I'm going to go on. I would have a seizure and she would feel better. And here's what I did. I let that be enough. See, when people came to my house, they felt sad. And when they left my house, they felt better. I couldn't remember your name 5 minutes later. But the truth is, in Alcoholics Anonymous, when we're useful, our life has purpose and it matters. And so having a seizure was not my spiritual goal. I really had an ego that thought I'd have followers and I'd be on the mountain because, I just had that artificial ego because I felt so poorly of myself. But what I did was I partnered with God and I let it be enough. I did not feel sorry for myself. And if all I would ever be able to do is make a difference in a newcomer's life, it would have been enough. And we know what happens when we start to be useful? We get better. I don't care what's wrong with us. We get better. And so I started to get better. And I started to walk again. I started to get my feet on the ground. Oh, lucky me. The internet was brand new. I went to meetings on AOL. It's like I had community. It was really awesome. And then I got diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. So everything I'm going to tell you happened in 6 years. And I went through the majority of a year doing chemo and radiation. Guess who was still there for me? You guys. Guess who took me to chemo? You guys. Guess who held my head while I puked? You guys. I had one day during that I did feel a little sorry for myself, and I got mad at God. What do you want from me, man? I had this childhood that would have killed anybody. I come off the streets where nobody makes it out. I come out of these institutions where people are left to rot. I have alcoholism. I had this highway motorcycle accident. Now I got cancer. And then you step back for a second, and here's what I heard. What do you want from me? You had all these things that most people are dead from, and you're still here. And that's what recovery gives me. It didn't change my circumstances, but it changed the way I got to look at them. See, instead of it being poor me, all these things happened to me, all of a sudden it's like, look how lucky I am. Nobody makes it from where I've made it. Nobody gets through all this stuff. Lucky me. And sometimes just being sick and still being positive and being about AA help new people because they saw that here's this person that might be dying that's had all these things, that loves AA, that's still coming. And they would come around me because it was like I had something magical to give them. For newcomer and old timer alike, it was so helpful. So then I started a little business after that nobody thought would make it. I was still, the traumatic brain injury people were coming and helping me organize my bills. That lady was so nice. When I told her I was going to start an internet company, I had $1,700 to my name. She didn't say, what are you thinking? She said, if you need help organizing there, let me know. And I started a company with no business cards, no money, no nothing. I can't tell you how it made it, but I will tell you, never bust anybody's dreams because today that business does business globally. But I started going in it. So all this stuff happened in 6 years. I started going in it. And we weren't making any money yet, and I did have Social Security, disability, and food stamps that were helping me so that I could sustain myself. And then and then I started to fall and not be able to get up. So when I was a kid, I got kicked through doors and my back got broke. And then when I had the accident, it exacerbated that break. And so I had to go have this big surgery. And if you come from trauma, you'll know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, that's okay too. But my experience is that it triggered all that trauma. Every time something got kicked in my back or thrown in my back and I'm laying in the hospital and it's like that slideshow. And I didn't know what to do with it. And my sponsor, she said the worst words I ever heard. She said, we're going to do some forgiveness work. Oh, and I'm like 17 years sober at this point. And we did. We forgave the man that did that. And the evidence is I made amends, not for what he did. I made amends for what I did with what he did. Because what I did with what he did was I blamed him for every failure I had in my life. And I made sure that nobody thought highly of him. And I degraded that. And no matter what he did, that's wrong. I tell you, I'm going to fast forward here in a second. And for the grand finale of the 6 years, I had got some success. I bought a Victorian house, which has very high ceilings. I was showing a contractor the attic, and I fell through the rafters and landed on my neck in the doorway below. And my C5 vertebrae split in half, and I was paralyzed from the chest down. Now, I wouldn't tell these stories if it wasn't AA in Louisville, Kentucky that took care of me every step of the way because it feels pretty unbelievable to even talk about it. But it's true. And there was a bazillion people that took care of me and never gave up. I wanted to give up when I could only move my arms like this. I wanted to give up. I just thought, golly, I'm tired. All that in 6 years. But guess what? You guys said, Cyndi, we have helped you get up every time you've wanted to. You get up for us this time. And I will tell you that today I walk. They did a miracle surgery. I don't have a C5 vertebrae. I've got all kinds of hardware in my neck, and I have a lot of issues today because of all of these things. But I am here. I am present. I cannot see that timer. Can you tell me what time it says? Because I can't see it. It's kind of dull.
It says,
Is it 10? I don't know.
oh, 9 minutes left.
Thank you. So, God, I got a lot to fit in 9 minutes. I'm going to try to crash it in, you guys. Um, but here's what happened. I got an infection in the wound and almost died again, right? So I've had near-death experience 3 times. And, it's kind of cool, really. And but I didn't have enough money or good enough insurance for antibiotics to come to my house. So I had to go to one of those clinics and I had to be there at 7 in the morning. And so my home group made a list of people to come pick me up every morning. And it was newcomers. So imagine somebody that you're going to trust somebody with 6 weeks sober to come get you for 7 a.m. appointment. I was like, holy moly. But guess what? I never missed an appointment. And it gave those newcomers a chance to spend time with somebody that had some sobriety. And it gave me a chance to get to know those newcomers. And it was magical because that's the thing, and that's the only thing, not material success, not the car I drive, not anything. That's the only thing for me that makes life worth living. It's that love connection. It's that magic thing that only we have. Golly. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit. There's been a lot of stuff, like in 2010, my brother was murdered. And, we all come from that same place. And it broke my heart. We're Irish twins, 9 months apart. But what happened was two things happened. My dad was very rude at his funeral because my dad cannot handle it. And so what he did is instead of dealing with his grief, he told my mother she had 2 weeks to cry and that was it. And he told everybody he never respected my brother anyway. And I had to re-deal. So we don't just deal with something once. I had to re-deal with that forgiveness thing because it come back a little bit. And then my mother, I really blamed her more than my dad. See, none of us kids stayed at home past 15. None of us graduated high school, right? And I blamed her because she would lie when children's services came. And she didn't protect us in any way. And I felt like she could. See, I saw her, it's delusional dishonesty because I saw her as more capable than she was. And what I recognized when I saw her grieve my brother was how much she hurt and how much remorse and guilt, shame she had. And all I wanted to do was help her. 3 months later, I'm in the hospital. I'm septic because I always have things. And my mom's there and she said, please don't die. I don't think I can take it. It's usually about her and maybe why I lived. And she turned 70 while I was there. But I made a commitment to myself that I was going to try to help her have the best life she could for the rest of her life. And the next year, my sister and I took her and my aunt to Africa. And I saw my mom smile again for the first time. It was her dream trip. And And then fast forward to COVID, my mom's all pissed off because she's turning 80 and it's COVID. I'm not going to have an 80th birthday. This isn't fair. Her birthday is also 4 days after Christmas. She's always been mad. And so somehow I got a bunch of 80-year-olds. Am I out of time? Do you want me to shut up? 5 minutes. Okay, thank you. And somehow sorry, you guys, but I got a bunch of 80-year-olds to make 1 minute videos. And if you've ever, this is my biggest gift I've ever given anybody, because if you've ever tried to get 80-year-olds, especially during COVID, so they're older now, right? And get them to do a video for you telling your mom what she's meant to them. Well, I got a whole hour's worth of those. And I drove down on her birthday during COVID that she wasn't going to celebrate, that she's all mad about. And I stuck that little thumb drive in a computer. And I saw for the first time in my life my mom cry happy tears. How blessed am I? You guys gave me this. See, if I couldn't have a relationship with them until I was healed, and I didn't need them to fix any of the things they broke. For a long time, I was so delusional, I thought they should apologize. They should make it right. They should help me be. And finally, I had to let go of all that. And I had to see them as human beings, not as the dynamic duo, not as super parents. They were human beings with gross limitations. And they hurt. My dad never had a birthday celebrated in his childhood. He's the seventh son of the seventh son of the seventh son. He had rocks thrown in his head, So him smashing my brothers and my heads together was a step up, His intentions were good. He probably had dissociative disorder, but I had to get whole enough that I could see him as a person and have compassion for my mom. And so right after that, my dad gets cancer. And he gets cancer because he gets COVID and they catch it. And that's when I saved for a second home. Cincinnati was not my dream, but I bought a house here 2 miles from their house because I still can't stay in their house and do that 24/7, right? I can't do it, but I can be a really good daughter. And my sister's husband was dying, and my sister and we have a great relationship. I made amends to her 40 some years ago, and we have developed a relationship over 40 years, and we're true partners. But her husband was in hospice. So I'm on. And so I did that with my dad. My dad has dementia, severe dementia, and he's turned into the nicest person I've ever met. And if I hadn't forgiven him, I never would have got the gift of having him be kind. And when I walk in the door, he's like, "Hi, sweetie," like, "Hi, sweetie, where the hell did this come from?" And then I bought him an Apple Watch, and he put Mickey on it. He's like, "Look at this guy. Every morning he says, 'Good morning, pal.'" I told my dad at Easter a couple of years ago, I said, "Dad, I'm going to give you the best childhood for the rest of your life that I can." He said, "I like that." Now, this is this guy that I was terrified of my whole life. And if I would have kept him in the box, I couldn't have seen him now. And here's the thing. If you put me in the box of how you got to know me 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, you're going to miss out on who I am now. Because I work hard to grow and change every day. And I want you to give me that. But I don't want to give you that. And so that's what I learned with my parents. I've got to give them that. I've got to let them be. Sometimes I have to look at them as they're just service work for me. They're not a place I get filled. They don't have it to give. They do not have it. But I work and help in homeless shelters. I go to the prisons and the jails. I listen to women's fifth steps where their kids have been treated exactly the way we were. And they feel terrible. Why wouldn't I serve my own family the same compassion? That's the gift you've given me. Some days I like them. Some days they're really hard because they need so much. They're like having little children. But you guys made me into somebody that can do this. I'm not somebody that should be able to do this. Today I have 3 businesses. I help a lot of people with chronic pain. My brain injury and my neck injury create hemiplegic brain migraines that present like strokes. I navigate a lot of things, and I'm so lucky to be here. And that's really what I think every day. I can't believe I get to be here. And I'm not letting anything, see, life's an apple, and I'm eating every bite. Pain's not going to keep me from being here. My past isn't going to keep me from being here. You know, I have a big God that lets me be present. Thank you for letting me share in your meeting. Thanks for inviting me back. I love you guys. I really do.